dark, cold world out there.
There's a time to live and a time for a man to die. There are places for dead men in the earth and the sky. Don't you venture too far now, 'cause you can't come back from the place where the good guys always dress in black. When you go to the old saloon at the dead South End, gonna find you a man there wants to be your friend. If you dare to deny his wish, you'll be dead by dawn. So give him a drink and a smile and then move right on.
Hi, I'm JC. Welcome to Legends of Texas, history, myths, and ghost stories. I began researching the internet to find stories about Texas. There are hundreds of them. This episode is about El Muerto, the Headless Horseman. In 1850, the Wild Horse Desert was disputed territory. After the Mexican-American War ended in 1848, the Rio Grande was declared the border between Texas and Mexico by the U.S. Mexico, however, insisted that the Nueces River was the real border. This meant that the area between the two rivers became no man's land and became known as the Wild Horse Desert. It was a lawless no man's land. The edges of this territory was enforced by the Army, but in no man's land, it was the Texas Rangers. These few hundred military and lawmen were simply not enough to control the area, and it was further complicated by the ranchers on both sides of the border who took the law into their own hands. This was also a time of what they called open range ranching. This meant that cattlemen would run their herds on this public land. Now, barbed wire hadn't been invented yet, so ranchers branded their livestock to identify their ownership. But for thieves and rustlers, the brands were easy to change. Stolen livestock was herded by the thousands, long distances to cross the border near Brownsville and Matamoros. During this time, a man known simply as Vidal appeared on the scene. He was a notorious rustler who, along with his men, stole cattle all over South Texas. Soon Vidal had a high price on his head and was wanted, dead or alive. Vidal, along with 3 of his henchmen, gathered up a large number of horses grazing near the San Antonio River. Now, what Vidal didn't know was among this herd were several prize Mustangs belonging to a Texas Ranger, Creed Taylor. By this time, Taylor had had enough of his herd being rustled and quickly gathered fellow ranger Bigfoot Wallace and a nearby rancher, Flores. Both Wallace and Taylor were as skilled at tracking as any Comanche. They quickly found the trail of Vidal and his henchmen. When they found the rustlers' camp, they waited until the dark of night. When the bandits were sleeping, they attacked, catching them unawares, and killed the thieves. But just killing them wasn't enough for these rangers. In those days, stealing cattle and horses was an offense more serious than murder. In those days, in an attempt to deter bandits, it was a matter of brutal justice, often stringing them up in trees, shooting them, or chopping them up and leaving them for animal bait. But none of these had stopped the outlaws. As a dramatic example of frontier justice, Wallace beheaded Vidal and then lashed him into a saddle on the back of a wild Mustang. He tied the outlaw's hands to the pommel and secured the torso to the saddle with long strips of rawhide. Placing the severed head into the bandit's sombrero and tying that to the saddle horn. He then turned the horse loose and left it to roam the Texas hills. Soon stories began to quickly pile up. Stories of the headless rider seen in remote territories with its sombreroed head swinging back and forth to the rhythm of the horse's gait. As time went on, more and more of the cowboys told stories of seeing the dark horse with its headless rider roaming through the territory. Finally, a posse of local ranchers captured the wild horse at a watering hole near the tiny community of Benbolt, just south of Alice, Texas. Still strapped on the Mustang's back was the now dried up corpse of Vidal. It had been shot several times and had Indian arrows sticking out of it. The body was finally buried in an unmarked grave near Benbolt, and the horse was free of its burden at last. Normally, that would be the end of this story, but the legend lives on. Soon after he was laid to rest, soldiers at Fort Ing began to see the headless rider. Travelers and ranchers in No Man's Land also reported seeing this apparition. The Phantom Rider was credited with all sorts of evil deeds and bad luck. He instilled terror in the hearts of those who feared they might meet him on a dark and lonely night. In 1917, a couple traveling by covered wagon camped just outside of San Diego, Texas. They reported the next day that as they sat by the campfire, a large dark stallion sped by, with a headless horseman shouting, "It is mine! It is all mine!" Another sighting was reported near Freer, Texas in 1969. A posse on a manhunt reported seeing El Muerto. People as far away as El Paso, New Mexico, and even Mexico still report seeing the headless apparition riding on horseback with the severed head swaying in its sombrero. This legend lives on, and today people still report seeing the headless rider galloping through this no man's land on a clear and moonlit night in South Texas. So if you find yourself driving down a lonesome highway on a dark night in South Texas, you might see a headless figure riding on horseback. Don't look too closely. Otherwise, you might see something you'll wish you could forget. You might see El Muerto, the Headless Horseman. This is JC. Thanks for watching. If you found this entertaining and want to see more of these stories of Legends of Texas, please subscribe. Then you can be notified when the next episode of Legends of Texas will be posted. And as always, feel free to comment and give me a like. Have a great day.